The actual rules of Yu-Gi-Oh are fairly simple, but the cards make things harder to learn by having like a billion words on each card in a very small window. This is by far the largest entry barrier to new players. One of the main issues with Yu-Gi-Oh is it doesn't have keywords, but this is being slowly implemented, with keywords and abbreviations just now being added to new cards. Like in Magic, there are keywords on almost every card, with like Trample, Flying, and Shroud. These all convey a game mechanic in a way that is both fast and easy to understand, with cards being printed in each yearly core set that have full explanations for these keywords. In Yu-Gi-Oh, though, you can have an archetype where every card has like the same effect, and it will be explained in full on each individual card, in addition to their each individual, like, crazy wordy effects. Like in Ghost Ricks, which is an archetype that I love, almost every Ghost Rick monster has the ability to flip itself face down once per turn, but instead of giving it a keyword like Ghosty Flippy, it explains it on each card, and this happens all over the place. One of my all-time favorite archetypes, Madolche, they all have the ability that if they're destroyed by your opponent's card effects or by battle, then they get shuffled back into your deck instead of going into your graveyard. But they don't all say Madolche Truffle Shuffle, instead they all explain that. And then they all have their own lengthy and wordy abilities on top of that. And like I said, they've slowly started implementing this. Like, new cards use abbreviations, like replacing graveyard with the letters GY, which really just goes to show how much of an issue this is in the first place. Like, the space for the text explanations of their cards is so limited that they have to reduce the word graveyard to 2 letters because they really just need to cram in those extra 2 words. They also have added the keyword piercing, which is just trample from Magic the Gathering. If your monster attacks a defense position monster and your monster has a higher attack than your opponent's monster's defense, you normally don't deal any battle damage to your opponent and you just destroy your opponent's monster. With piercing, you inflict the difference between your monster's attack and the opponent's monster's defense as battle damage to your opponent. They used to explain this on every single card with this ability, and they finally started replacing it with just, this card has piercing. That's the only specific one I know of off the top of my head, and this is definitely the biggest problem I have with Yu-Gi-Oh, and I think it's the main reason it's difficult to get new players involved. One of the first things you need to choose before you play Yu-Gi-Oh is what platform you're going to play on. More than with any other card game, the platform you choose can determine how quickly you actually learn the game, as well as how much you enjoy it, and there are advantages and disadvantages to each one you can choose. The first and most obvious answer is to play the game in real life with people that you know, but the immediate downside of this is that it's expensive and time-consuming to get all the cards that you need. Unlike with Magic the Gathering or any other reasonable card game, you can't just get a bunch of booster packs and use the resulting cards to build a deck. I'll explain this in more detail later, but for now just understand that you really can't build a deck at all out of booster packs. You have to buy specific cards online or trade with other people. Buying cards means that it takes a lot of money to get a deck together, you have to wait for the cards to arrive, and you actually have to have people to play with in your immediate area. For people like me whose friends aren't really into Yu-Gi-Oh, that basically means going to your local card shop and interacting with the weirdest people on earth. Going to the card shops can be fun, but it can be really hard for casual players to enjoy because the gap between casual and competitive decks in this game is larger than in any other game I've seen. A player with a casual deck can often just get killed in one turn by any sort of competitive deck. And given the fact that people at card shops generally aren't the most outgoing and sociable, it can be really hard to just go there and play for fun. I don't know if it's like this everywhere, but literally every single card shop I've played at has been like this. The second choice is to play virtually. The issue with this is that there are 3 main platforms that I would recommend choosing from, and only one of them is officially supported by Konami. The first is called Dueling Book, and it's how I started playing online. I can't say that I recommend using this site at all, but I know some people swear by it. This doesn't have any actual code for how the cards work, so nothing is automated. For example, if you want to play a spell card, you have to click the spell card in your hand and tell it to be played face up on the field, and then ask your opponent if they understand what's happening, and click on the card and tell it to go to the graveyard, and then move all the cards on the field appropriately. Because nothing on this site is really automated, your opponent can just ignore you, leading to a lot of having to call the admin and a lot of cheating. With that said, the real reason I don't recommend using this platform is that it provides no help in learning what the cards do. Just like in real life, it doesn't automate anything, so you need a full understanding of how the cards work in order to use them properly. The next one of these virtual platforms is Legacy of the Duelist. There are other Yu-Gi-Oh video games out there, but this one has the most up-to-date cards of all the video games, is the most fully fleshed out, and is just generally the best. This game is available on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, and it's actually supported by Konami, which none of the other ones can claim. There are only 2 real downsides to playing Legacy of the Duelist. One, you don't start with all the cards. While it's fun to unlock cards later on, and the game doesn't really try to screw you over by having any in-game purchases, it can be a pain at the start to try and start winning duels with a deck with cards like Beaver Warrior in it. Unlocking cards is fun later on because it's really kind of satisfying to open the booster packs, and you get the ability to open a lot of these often without any in-game purchases to be seen. One of the biggest problems is that you can't tell which booster pack contains which cards. Even after you have a card, if you're trying to get like a second or third copy of it, there's no in-game way to tell which booster pack that card came from. 2, this game may not be supported in the future. Konami did release 2 new in-game booster packs that came with more cards, and the DLC adds a fair bit of new content and decks, but there's no way to tell if this game is ever going to be updated again. This game is already 1 or 2 real-life booster pack sets behind, and it's unclear if that's going to change. Aside from these 2 cons, the main pro of playing this game is that it's fully automated. This is a great way to learn the game, and depending on which deck the computer is using, the game ramps up very organically in difficulty. I mean, you start the game fighting other guys with Beaver Warrior, and end up fighting guys with Cyber Dragon Infinity. As far as learning how to play the game goes, this game implements all methods of summoning, provides tutorials for how they function, and fully automates all card interactions, allowing new players to learn what's going on much more quickly than a site like Dueling Book would. This is actually the platform that I use the most, and it's really relaxing to be able to sit on my couch and play some chill games of Yugioh using my sweet Noble Knight deck. The third and final digital platform that I would consider is Yugioh Pro. This is generally heralded as the best platform to play the game on, and has the largest online community. Yugioh Pro is a fan-created platform that provides all cards to the players as soon as they're leaked, and even more impressively, is fully automated. All cards are available to all players from the very beginning, and the game is entirely free. Yugioh Pro also allows you to save replays of your matches in case you want to keep a record of you dunking on kids. Or you getting dunked on if you're into that sort of thing. As a fun bonus, this game has a pretty good AI to play against. I use this much more than I actually play against people because I'm a scrub. There are a few repeatable exploits that can be used against this AI, but overall it's pretty good, and the decks at its disposal are kind of meta even, so you can play against some stronger decks if you want to. This leads into my short list of downsides for Yugioh Pro. The AI is not friendly to casual players. At all. The AI knows no fear and has no time for mercy, but this is still pretty good if you want to get a feel for how you might fare against some reasonably strong opponents. As an extension of this, there's no sort of campaign or single-player mode except for the versus AI mode. I know that these 2 complaints only matter if you're a casual player, but I'm not very good at this game, so... The one legitimate gripe I have with this game isn't the fault of its creators. The client for this game used to be easily accessible, but Konami slapped this game with a cease and desist so hard it was like fighting his magic all over again. Now you have to jump through several internet hoops in order to actually find a download link for the Yugioh Pro client. Although once you have it, it is self-updating, so you only have to go through that pain once. Once you've selected a platform for this game, whether it's online or in person, you need to choose a deck that you're going to use. To once again compare this game to its counterpart, Magic, decks in this game aren't really like Magic the Gathering decks. For starters, drafting in Yu-Gi-Oh! Really isn't possible. Drafting is when you get cards from a few booster packs and then build a deck with those cards. Cards you get in a booster pack in Yu-Gi-Oh! Will often refer to specific other cards that they require in order to function. What this means is that you don't generally build a deck from the ground up, and instead you copy them from people who know better than you do. Decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Are usually defined by an overall archetype of cards. For example, Sub-Terrors, Noble Knights, Ghostricks, and Madolches are archetypes that I care for. Choosing a Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck is more like choosing a character in a video game than it is to build your own deck in something like Magic. While you can change the numbers and ratios of some of the cards in the decks, core cards and staples don't really change. I highly recommend choosing an archetype and then looking up a deck profile that's recent of that archetype and then copying that exactly until you become familiar with that specific archetype as well as becoming more familiar with how the game is played. When you first pick an archetype of cards, just choose one that appeals to you, whether that's because of the card art or theme or play style. If you want to expend all your resources into making one boss monster that your opponent will get rid of in one turn, build Noble Knights. If you want to annoy your opponent and have a 15-minute duel until you lose, build Ghostricks. If you want to someday rule Kaiba Corp, build Blue Eyes.